Madara vs Hashirama is the most famous in-universe battle in the Naruto series. It's an epic fight of majestic proportions that was built up ever since Naruto Part 1, when Naruto and Sasuke fought in the Valley of the End. You could see that this fight was nothing normal in the Naruto universe because two massive statues of Madara and Hashirama were built in the place which they fought. And the interesting thing is that we don't know exactly what those statues were the first time Naruto and Sasuke arrive in the Valley of the End. It's just a very interesting piece of imagery that makes everything more epic. Naturally, later on we understand what those statues were there for, and everybody talks about that fight as being one of the most cataclysmic events that's ever happened in the verse. An event that defined the destiny of the Leaf Village and essentially the Land of Fire in of itself, because Madara challenged Hashirama for the title of first Hokage there, or so they thought. The real reason behind why Madara tried to fight against Hashirama in the Valley of the End there was different, but we're gonna get into that a little bit later. What's important to know is that this fight is famous, and in the imaginary of the audience was already an extremely great fight. And this is the first problem Kishimoto would have when he actually put the fight to page and showed how it happened. Because everybody knew about this fight already, everybody, including the characters and the audience most importantly, we had our expectations as to what it would have looked like. And because it was built up from so early on, everyone was expecting something great. Which is problematic because usually the imagination of an audience member is much more powerful than something you could show. So when you imply things to be great and never really show everything exactly how it was, just snippets here and there like Hashirama and Madara fighting in the Valley of the End, the audience fills in the gaps, and usually those gaps are great in the audience's mind. So when you finally get to show how the fight really looked like, it's really hard to achieve what the audience is expecting from it. What we knew before we saw the real fight happening was that Madara and Hashirama fought in the place that became known as the Valley of the End. The battle caused the valley to form itself, so yeah, we knew the scale of that battle was beyond anything we've ever seen. We knew that Madara controlled the Nine Tails to fight against Hashirama, and we knew that Madara lost and supposedly died. That's a very fertile ground for the imagination of the audience to run wild and speculate about every type of scenario those two characters could have faced each other in. And oddly enough, Kishimoto exceeded expectations when he finally showed the climactic confrontation between the two ancient rivals. In what's definitely my favorite volume of the Naruto manga, volume 65, in which Kishimoto tells the backstory of Madara and Hashirama, their climactic battle, and also their childhood, how the Leaf Village was created. And yeah, it's essentially a very long flashback sequence, but it's an amazing piece of storytelling. First, it's interesting to see how that even came to be, because out of nowhere, we get some chapters telling the backstory about Madara and Hashirama. Obviously, it's a very important piece of the lore and something that's interesting for us to know. After all, Madara, or at least somebody posing as Madara, has been the main antagonist throughout the entire Shippuden era. And now that we are at the war arc and the real Madara is wreaking havoc, it's important for us to know what motivates him. Also, just having more world building in of itself with the Warring States period, the foundation of the Leaf Village, is great. This flashback comes to be when Sasuke wants to know what a ninja is and what a village is, because he is pretty confused after he saw Itachi again. He's thinking things over and he wants answers, so he calls back the first four Hokage with the Edo Tensei using Orochimaru as help. And I think one of the most brilliant things Kishimoto does here is that he uses Hashirama as the point of view character to tell the story about Madara. Now obviously he was one of the important characters of that story, but it's interesting to see the different perspectives. And also Hashirama is the one who ultimately changes Sasuke's mind, making him protect the Leaf Village instead of destroying it. Of course, Sasuke was a little more twisted in that he wanted to revolutionize the entire shinobi system in a very radical way, but that's something for another video. Let's look at how Kishimoto portrayed the fight between Madara and Hashirama, and also the other snippets of the flashback. So when Hashirama starts retelling the story, he immediately goes to the fight between Madara and himself. The first panel we see of the fight is Madara and Hashirama clashing their weapons, and the moon is the background for the entire panel. It's a very interesting one, and immediately when they disengage, Madara lands on top of the Nine Tails. And yes, we knew that Madara was controlling the Nine Tails to fight against Hashirama, but as soon as he lands on the Nine Tails, you just realize, oh yeah, I forgot, this fight had a massive scale and it's gonna blow up the entire valley of the end here. It just gives this sense of epicness because the Nine Tails is this gargantuan force of nature that ever since the literal first page of the manga has been said to be the strongest thing that ever existed. We see the effects of the Nine Tails on Naruto throughout the entire series, and here, Madara is controlling the beast as though it's not a big deal. And Hashirama is also fighting against it as if, you know, it's just another Tuesday. So without them even saying anything, it's clear that, okay, they are on another level. You're about to watch a fight between essentially two demigods in the shinobi world, which frankly is very exciting. A lot of people say, oh, the Naruto story lost its flavor because now the powers are so strong and they don't use strategy anymore. Now, the first thing is that the power levels, yes, they were not as high in the beginning of the series, but in the first page of the manga, as I said before, the Nine Tails was established as a creature that could destroy mountains and create earthquakes just by waving its tail. So it's natural that eventually we will reach this point of power in the story, especially when the main character has the Nine Tails inside of him and other characters can control it. And we know that Madara and Hashirama are exceptions in the world. They are much more powerful than your average ninja. They are much more powerful than your most powerful ninjas even. So this fight is going to be something else. And the other thing people complain about that, oh, they don't use strategy anymore to fight with those big powers, is also not correct. As you're gonna see here, Madara and Hashirama use a lot of strategy to fight each other. The fight resumes with Hashirama using a wood dragon to shoot it against the Nine Tails, and Madara attacks forward. The dragon wraps itself around the Nine Tails, which was set up before when Madara himself in the war arc used his wood dragon that he got from his Hashirama cells and essentially did the same thing to Naruto's Kurama avatar. But Madara reacts and shoots a Bijudama, destroying the dragon, and then you're like, okay, Madara just shot a Bijudama straight at Hashirama. He wiped out the wood dragon with it. What's Hashirama gonna do? Because we've seen time and time again that Bijudamas are essentially the most destructive things that exist in the Naruto universe, and there's one heading straight towards Hashirama's face here. Hashirama grins and uses a wood golem to literally grab the Bijudama, and he shoves it back against Madara's Nine Tails as if he's carrying a Rasengan with his golem, but instead of it, it's a Bijudama. Like the most casual thing in the world. Madara then summons his Susanoo and protects the Nine Tails from the explosion, which is massive, and both Madara and Hashirama don't even get scratched by it. They protected themselves very effectively against a Nine Tails Bijudama, something that's not exactly easy to do. The first time we saw a Bijudama was shot by a four-tailed version of the Nine Tails, and it completely wiped out 3 Hashimons. Orochimaru almost died to it, and this is a full Nine Tails Bijudama, much more powerful. Madara and Hashirama just kind of shrugged the attack off. So this already shows that Madara and Hashirama know what each other can do, and they are very much used to fight against each other because they come up with strategies and counters a lot, and they think very fast, as if they fought each other many times before, which certainly is true. Madara then does one of the coolest things that's ever happened in the Narutoverse, and he coats the Nine Tails with his perfect Susanoo, with the Majestic Attire Susanoo. And it's just one of the most intimidating things that's ever happened. The Nine Tails is encased by the humanoid armor, the helmet closes down, and then you're like, okay, that's really, really smart, because technically, the Susanoo is just an empty suit of armor, and now there's someone inside of it. It just so happens to be the Nine Tails, the strongest creature of the verse. How the hell is Hashirama gonna fight that? He even says it himself, oh, Madara, you cheeky bastard, that's really smart, coating the Nine Tails with the Susanoo. And he's still smiling during that. He grabs the Susanoo sword with his wood hands, and then uses this massive scale jutsu, summoning several hands off the ground, which try to grab the Nine Tails, and Madara, he has none of that. He swings his Susanoo sword, and he slashes through all of the wood hands. But not just that, we see that an entire mountain range is completely shredded. Just like that, casually destroyed with the air blown from the attack. And yeah, we had seen something like that when Madara first used his perfect Susanoo against the 5 Kage, but this is even greater because it's more mountains, it's all around them in the Valley of the End. Like, all of those mountains got their tops just completely destroyed, cut through like butter, and you're like, they're not even looking at what's happening around them. Like, it's as though this is normal for them, which is absolutely insane. I remember first reading this fight and thinking to myself, okay, these guys have an insane amount of chakra, and just the sheer power that they possess is just something else. And now Madara is pressing Hashirama down with his Majestic Attire Susanoo. Hashirama literally has to run away, and then to make sure Hashirama won't be able to grab another Bijudama and throw it against Madara, he laces the Bijudama with his Susanoo sword and essentially creates this massive explosive shuriken. It's really good strategy and it looks absolutely amazing. When Madara shoots that, Hashirama's like, okay, I ain't gonna be able to grab that, so he summons a 5-layer Rashomon, and the Rashomon is absolutely annihilated by the Bijudama. Like, it's as though there is nothing there at all. The Bijudama passed through, just completely shredding through them, and the only thing Hashirama achieved with those was to change the direction of the Bijudama, which goes several kilometers and explodes on the other side of the shore. And this is when Hashirama and Madara kind of stare each other out, and Madara tells him that he's reached the other side, which harkens back to when they used to skip stones in the river, and Hashirama was better than Madara at it. He could get the stone to the other side, and Madara couldn't. And they have an interesting conversation here. You can clearly see that Madara has other plans, that he is beyond the Leaf Village now. He doesn't care too much about it anymore. Even though great sacrifices were made during the Warring States period to create the village, many Uchiha and Senju had died, Madara, well, he had other plans. He had the Eye of the Moon, something that he never told Hashirama explicitly, and Hashirama obviously wanted to bring Madara back, just like Naruto wanted to bring Sasuke back. He even tells Madara, I don't want to kill you, and then Madara gets annoyed and says, wait, you think you can kill me anytime you want? And then Hashirama's just like, it's not the point, man. What you're doing is wrong. We built this nation with so much effort, blood and tears. Why are you throwing this all away? And then Madara says, because he's reached the other side, implying that he knows more than Hashirama does now. That the shinobi system they created will still perpetuate the disgrace, the tragedy that they've experienced during the Warring States period, and so he has to do something about it. Hashirama understands that there's no negotiating with Madara at this point, and he summons his 1,000-arm Buddha statue. And yeah, this is one of the craziest things that anybody's done in the series. The Buddha statue is about the size of the Leaf Village. For instance, Hashirama's wood golem is about the size of the Nine Tails, and it sits on top of the statue's head as though it's a hat. And then when it's zoomed out, you can see the difference of size between the Majestic Attire Susanoo Nine Tails to the 1,000-arm Buddha statue, and the thing is gigantic. This certainly is a worthy jutsu for the god of shinobi, and yeah, look at the scale of this thing, it's insane. Then we actually go to the flashback when Madara and Hashirama were kids during the Warring States period. And it's such a rich and tragic story. Kids dying in the battlefield, we see Madara and Hashirama having to fight to protect their clan and the ones they love, but at the same time, they want to do that. And when they meet each other, they become friends really quickly because they can bond over this absolute tragedy that is their lives. Now, they don't tell each other where they're from because they know if they do that, they're gonna be enemies there and there, but they choose to share their time together as best as they can, trying to ignore the tragedy and even practice against each other. They tell their dreams and aspirations. And one of the nicest details is that the person who names the Leaf Village is actually Madara, which I just find fascinating. Because when they're looking over at the place where one day will be the Leaf Village, Madara looks and says, oh, a good name could be a village hidden in the leaves. And then he's looking at it through the hole in that leaf. That becomes important later. Eventually, Madara's and Hashirama's dads find out about what they're doing, essentially fraternizing with the enemy, and they come up with a plan to kill each other, forcing Madara and Hashirama to lead the other into a trap, but then they arrive at the same time. Madara and Hashirama obviously warn each other about the danger, and then we get the scene where they part ways, essentially, and become enemies until the Leaf Village is formed. The scene where Madara awakens his Sharingan and decides to side with his clan and protect his family. And you can see he awakens the Sharingan here because of his loss. He is no longer going to be able to be friends with Hashirama anymore, and they're going to be deadly enemies from now on, and that was a friendship Madara cared about. But family came first, and obviously his Sharingan awakens for it. They become leaders of their clans, and it's interesting to see that they fight every other week during the Warring States period. Until Izuna, Madara's brother, dies, and he awakens the EMS, the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, and challenges Hashirama one last time for a fight in which Hashirama wins, but it's implied that Madara kinda fought against Hashirama and the entire Senju clan, because when Madara is defeated and downed, there are all those Senjus surrounding him, including Tobirama himself, and Hashirama says that Madara collapsed after a day of fighting. I mean, this is pretty damn insane, isn't it? And then comes another very underrated moment, I would say. Tobirama is telling Hashirama to go and kill Madara because, yeah, this is gonna end the war essentially, and Hashirama looks at him with those deadly eyes and says, "Do not touch him," because Hashirama still believed that there could be peace, something better than this current state of unending war. And he asks Madara what he'd have to do to get Madara to align himself and the Uchiha clan to the Senju and create a more prosperous world. And then Madara says, "You either kill your brother or you take your own life." And this is actually pretty poetic because Hashirama looks at him and smiles and says, "You are a nice man, Madara, because you gave me the choice not to kill my brother." Something that both of them would understand. And even though Madara absolutely despises Tobirama for killing Izuna, he still respected Hashirama enough not to force him into doing something unthinkable. And then Hashirama is gonna go with it. He's going to shove a kunai up his heart and essentially die. But Madara stops him, and then they create the Leaf Village. And the village is prosperous for a decent amount of time, but unfortunately, things don't go as Hashirama wanted. Madara sees that this shinobi system is not going to work, and he finds another solution unbeknownst to Hashirama, and leaves the village. Which takes them back to the fight in the Valley of the End, with a 1,000-armed Buddha statue clashing against an absolutely massive barrage of Bijudamas enhanced by the Susanoo sword. And they almost cancel each other out. The statue gets almost all of its arms blown away, and the Susanoo cracks around the Nine Tails, exposing a bit of its skin, and we see that very intimidating figure of the Nine Tails and a cracked Susanoo around it. But Hashirama gets the edge, and he manages to grab the Nine Tails as if it's just a little pet with a 1,000-armed Buddha statue, because of the size difference. It's an absolutely insane panel. It looks like the statue is grabbing a toy, but it's the massive Nine Tails. And then Hashirama uses a reverse healing jutsu to break the control of Madara over the tail beast. And then, Madara and Hashirama resume their fight. Unfortunately, we don't see a lot of what happens after that, but it's implied that a lot happened. Because when they cut away to the final moments of the fight, Madara has no suit of armor anymore, and Hashirama's suit of armor is blown off and his skin exposed, meaning that Madara was able to hurt him a lot during the fight, but his healing factor provided by the 100% Hashirama cell's body was pretty good and healed him up. And this is pretty insane, to be honest. The fight went for probably over a day here, and then they go for their final clash, which at first, you think Madara won, but then no, it was a wood clone, and Madara gets stabbed from behind by Hashirama's sword. Which takes it back to when Madara and Hashirama were kids, and Madara couldn't stand anybody standing on his back when he was peeing. In a very funny scene, like, Madara is funny, and it's underrated how funny he is when he is a kid and he's interacting with Hashirama as a kid too. Those interactions are funny as hell. But this speaks to Madara's hubris, that he doesn't think he can be caught from behind, but yes, Hashirama was able to do it. And he tells that, even if you're a friend, a dear person to me, I will kill you if it means to protect what we created, the Leaf Village. It comes before our bond of friendship. And obviously Hashirama didn't want to do that. He was sad that he had to kill Madara, quote unquote kill Madara, but he still did it. Which shows that Hashirama and Naruto were still different people, because Naruto never wanted to kill Sasuke. They had different philosophies, even though they had pretty much the same values, but we can see that in the end, Naruto's philosophy beats Hashirama's philosophy. We later find out that Madara actually wanted to fight Hashirama there to get some of his cells, so that he could implant them in his body and awaken the Rinnegan, which he does succeed in doing so, but he awakens the Rinnegan when he is extremely old. And so he has to entrust his plan to Obito until he can be brought back with Rinne Tensei. And yes, he had a fallback plan in case he died in the fight, an Izanagi that was programmed to activate after he fell. One could even argue Madara actually wanted to be defeated in the fight because that would fake his death really well and they wouldn't be looking for him anymore, so they wouldn't be able to interfere with the Eye to the Moon plan, but it's more likely that Madara simply lost the fight. And obviously the ripples of this fight are still being felt until the very final battle of the series. Madara and Hashirama, these two guys, they were never able to really see eye to eye with each other. Yes, they were friends and they respected each other, even when they were fighting against each other and trying to kill each other. But they had different philosophies and different ways to go about solving problems in the world of shinobi. They never reached a true understanding, but we see that in the final battle between Naruto and Sasuke, when their arms are blown off, and Naruto succeeds in bringing Sasuke back to the light, when Sasuke sees the error of his ways and becomes a better person, that the reconciliation sign is done by Madara and Hashirama's fingers, their statue fingers that are underneath them, in a very poetic and symbolic scene of those two characters that mirrored Madara and Hashirama, but actually reached an understanding. And yeah, if you think about it, it was kind of obvious that the statues would be destroyed ever since they were first introduced, because the theme of the story is that the shinobi system has caused many problems over the years. Yes, Madara and Hashirama tried to help out in the Warring States period, ending it because a lot of kids were dying and the life expectancy was 35 years old, and by creating the village system and the shinobi system, then kids would be able to learn and just be normal kids. And this works for a while, but it doesn't take long for massive wars to break out once again, and now, instead of clans fighting each other, it's entire nations fighting each other, meaning that the battlefields will be much bloodier, and the entire philosophy of not throwing kids in the battlefield anymore is completely thrown to the wayside, because, yeah, maybe they didn't throw 6-year-olds in the battlefield, but they did throw 12-year-olds. Naoki, for example, Tsunade's brother, died in the Second Shinobi War. We literally see an entire flashback of Kakashi, Obito, and Rin as 13-year-olds fighting the Third Great Ninja War, and Obito quote-unquote died in that battle. Many kids were still dying in the battlefield, but now the scale of the conflict was much more massive, meaning that people still didn't come to an understanding. And Hashirama's classic line of, "Doesn't matter the time, there will always be conflict," holds. And you can see with this mindset that Hashirama was actually pretty pessimistic about the future. He thought no matter what anybody did, wars will still be fought, people will still die, but he tried to make things a little bit better by creating the villages. He didn't really think he would even succeed that much, because for example, when he is brought back via Edo Tensei, he looks at Minato and is like, "Who the hell are you?" And then Minato shows, "I am the 4th Hokage." And then Hashirama is like, "4th Hokage? That's crazy, dude! We got to the 4th!" And then he's actually told that Tsunade, his granddaughter, is the 5th Hokage, and then he's a little bit, oh man, she's not the right person for the job. But Hashirama being so surprised that the village got to a 4th Hokage shows that he didn't have a lot of faith on the shinobi system to hold at all. And then obviously when they tell Madara has returned and is using the 10 tails to fight against the world, he once again says, "It doesn't matter the time, there will always be war." That's also one of the only things Hashirama says in his Edo Tensei state in the fight against Hiruzen before Orochimaru wipes his mind. So it is a core characteristic of the character. Yes, Hashirama is an easygoing guy and a very honorable person, but he is pretty negative. Naruto, on the other hand, is the opposite. He is very positive. He's always optimistic about what people can be or can become or how they can change. And this is essentially how he united the 5 major nations and brought Sasuke back to the Leaf Village. And all of this is underlined by the Hashirama versus Madara fight, where Hashirama didn't see any other way other than killing Madara. He couldn't reach an understanding with his old friend, and this led to decades of conflict. Because think about this for a second. If Madara and Hashirama had remained allies, and if they saw eye to eye more often, by combining their powers, they could easily reach an understanding with the entire world. Who would even try to challenge the Leaf Village when they had Madara and Hashirama fighting for them alongside the Senju and the Uchiha clan in their entirety? The unfortunate nature of conflict that's propagated by people was what stopped them from doing so. But in the end, Naruto and Sasuke, their heirs, were the ones who finally brought an end to this era of conflict. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so already, and watch this other cool Naruto video right here for more content. Like the video too to help me out with the YouTube algorithm, it really helps, so please do, and thank you so much for watching.